Today we're having a really exciting session. I think you're very lucky to be here, learning about building AI assistants for busy people leaders in the HR and L&D space. I just now see this is an irrelevant row. Sorry about that. With the one and only Daan van Rossum, founder of Lead with AI. We'll talk about him soon. And this event is actually hosted by Juno Journey and the Learning Table community. So I'm just going to take 2 minutes to just say what that is, and then we'll start with Dan. Since this community is very, very dear to my heart, it's what I've been had the privilege to build in the last almost 2 years. So the Learning Table community, sponsored by Juno Journey, is basically a community for people, HR, L&D, talent leaders, basically all of our superheroes and the people we admire, that really is here to bring people together for anything that you need, since this role is very lonely sometimes. We bring a lot of impact to organizations working internally to help the organization succeed, but often are very small teams or sometimes even just one. So within this community was very meaningful to us. We offer both online webinars, workshops, just like this one. We have one almost every week. So I'll make sure you'll get the link to the pages so you can see what else is coming up. We also have some community hubs across the world, US, Europe, that just bring people really together for great evenings of learning and networking. We have some matchmaking, professional matchmaking, to really support each other with whatever challenge you need with peers from the community, and some exclusive events for senior leaders. That's where I had the opportunity to meet Dan in the first place, which was really, really cool. And just really 1 minute about Juno Journey, and how we're really helping organizations move from learning to workforce readiness. I promise it's 1 minute. So I'm really probably not going to be the first one to tell you that the world is changing, probably faster than our organizations can really execute. And the real question here is, where are we right now in supporting our employees with what they really need from us in this unbelievable change? And in order to understand that, let's talk about our people and the employees in our organizations and what they need right now. So some really numbers that are shocking to realize. For example, the average skill tenure reduced dramatically from years to almost nothing, which means that we need to continuously upskill and reskill almost every day. Think about this, the number of business applications we're now using just keeps on growing. And we want to make sure we see business value out of those, which basically means a lot of application training. And lastly, all of that change, we as a company deliver much faster, which means the knowledge that our people need keeps changing continuously. And to sum all that up, they really need our help. But now most L&Ds are right now is still being stuck, L&D and HR still being stuck in operational phase, rather than really supporting their people and preparing the workforce readiness. Things like, can you send me this report? Can you update this onboarding? Can you make this content more engaging? Whatever. Make sure everyone completed this compliance training. And that's now workforce readiness. And that's exactly where we as Juno Journey step in. So Juno supports hundreds of companies with their workforce readiness efforts in the humane era. We connect human strategy with automated execution, are all orchestrated by Juno, the agent. Juno understands your company focus, your department goals, and employees' capabilities, and she doesn't do the work by herself. She does it with a team of agents. Each and every one of them focuses on a specific aspect of your employees' workforce readiness, from onboarding to managers' enablement to compliance, knowledge enablement, priority-driven upskilling, and career management. And we do that through, and this is the last slide, two main models: the Juno Training, which is an AI-powered LMS that automates backend admin and takes care of content creation, real-time knowledge grabbing, verifying training understanding, automating workflows. Of course, Avital, you can have your AI assistant join by really everything tied up by the company priorities. And we have the Juno Growth, which is growth-driven LXP, which really turns performance goals into personalized development plans, actionable, creates career journeys, and automating learning budget management. And that's it for Juno Journey. If anyone wants to hear more, you know where to find us. And now let's take us to what we're really here for. AI assistants in HR and L&D. So I'm very privileged to introduce you to Dan van Rossum, if you haven't met him before, founder of Lead with AI. He had an incredible journey, I think, moving from digital strategy to really launching a magazine about happiness in a language you didn't speak. I'm so curious what that means. Running a network of co-working spaces, founding Flex OS, if I'm saying that correctly. Yes. And eventually founding Lead with AI. What their goal is basically helping leaders and organizations deploy AI towards meaningful impact through boot camps, ongoing education, community, and implementation. Their mission has always remained the same, to help deliver a happier future of work. And I hope that by the end of this session, that's exactly what you'll feel that Dan gave to you. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to move the mic to you, Dan. Thank you so much.
The bar is getting higher and higher.
Oh, just the expectations, very, very high.
Terrific. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I'm Daan. Thanks for the introduction, Cleo, and thank you for hosting us today. So we're going to get super practical. So yes, I'm the CEO and founder of Lead with AI. I spent the past 2 years as Clint was journeying, building the the learning table community. I was spending that time coaching all these executives on AI, frequently featured in media, LinkedIn Top Voice, newsletter, all that kind of good stuff. But as Cleo also just mentioned, really focusing on where can we bring AI in to have a better work life. And so we do that through executive training programs. We do it through champions programs. We do organizational-wide learning, et cetera, et cetera. But always about increasing your impact, right? So we always think that no one joined whatever role you're in. So whether you're actually in an HR, L&D, TA role, or you're somewhere else in the organization, no one joins to not be impactful, right? We all have a meaning and purpose behind what we do. And so we just want to make sure that you do more of that. And I think AI is the best weapon that we've ever had to have more capacity to do great things, right? And to also have the capabilities to do that. And so that's what we do with teams and leaders. We have some amazing clients. We're working a lot with Harvard recently, but also Microsoft, McKinsey, Apple, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, etc. But that's neither here or there, because today we're going to talk about AI assistant and we're going to make it as practical as possible. So if you want to raise a question either through the chat, if you are lucky enough to be a panelist, or through the Q&A, and I'll wave especially to Annika, who is one of our graduates in the attendee session or attendee side. Feel free to just raise it through Q&A, and then I will get to it as soon as possible. The four sections that we'll go through today, number one is really around AI assistants themselves and how can we practically apply them. And I have a couple of examples. I also have about 30 use cases. So even beyond those assistants, like where can you actually implement AI? And we, of course, should talk also about how to use AI responsibly. But I want to make it as concrete as possible. You may follow Lars Schmidt, the HR writer, blogger, podcaster, and he wrote an article which I think came out yesterday or this morning, and he was saying, "Oh, there's so much talk about AI, especially in HR." But then whenever I was trying to find something practical, then it actually doesn't really exist. And so I'll try and to break that up a little bit. I already realized that I should be sharing my slides with sound because I do have a little video here. So let me reshare. Okay, there we go. So let's start with a couple of practical ones, right? So it's very difficult whenever I do any training to try and appease everyone because everyone will be at different levels. You'll be using AI in different kind of ways. So I'll just show you a bunch of things. Some of it maybe sound almost like too technical, too difficult. Some may sound way too obvious. That's why we have the time after the presentation to kind of like discuss what would be helpful to you. But let's start with one example of an AI assistant you could implement today and get a lot of benefit from. By the way, I use this one a lot, so I feel confident in sharing this one. So I mentioned that we run these executive trainings, right? So every month, first Friday of the month. So we're starting again on Friday. Is fully sold out, but I'll just mention it again. We're starting on Friday. And the idea is basically that we take in just a couple of weeks, we'll take people through what do you really need to build assistants that are immediately impactful for your role. And we realized that actually the best way to do that is to use AI. So we created an AI interviewer, a voice interviewer, that before you start the program, you actually spend 15 to 20 minutes with that AI interviewer. Hint, hint. There's some analogies maybe with your role. And the AI interviewer is really good at asking super thoughtful questions and therefore gets to know you and gets to learn everything about you, right? Your role, your goals, your KPIs, what's difficult, where you get stuck, but also your level of AI fluency and the tools you're already using. And then it will basically recommend you what you should be implementing, right? So again, the only way I always say you cannot learn swimming by reading about water. In the same way, you cannot learn AI by just hearing about it. You got to do it, right? And so then at the end of that program, we do a little demo day. So people actually kind of Shark Tank style are presenting what they created. Annika actually did one of them, right? And this is one from the last cohort, and I thought it was so fitting. So I thought I would share it here. This is from Andre Mangels, who is the CEO of a big recruiting firm. And he used deep research. If you, again, the levels of AI fluency in this group could be all over the map. So if you're just in case you haven't, right? If you haven't used deep research at all, or you haven't used it recently, in most of your AI platforms, even on free plans like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, there is, sorry, Copilot not on the free plan, but for the other ones on the free plan, there is a feature called Deep Research, or in Copilot, it's called Research Assistant, Research Agent. And it basically allows you to brief an AI that's optimized to be super good at researching, to go and browse hundreds, literally hundreds of web pages to find something. And so, hey, we thought this could work really well for recruiting, especially if you have like a very specific profile that you're looking for. And so that's what Andrew, who again is the CEO of a major headhunting recruiting firm, that's what he used it for. And he told us that he actually deployed this agent. Again, it did probably a week's worth of research in about 20 minutes and then gave him the final report. I can show you my example maybe later if that's interesting. And he said, out of the candidates that his team, his human team found, and then the candidates that AI found, actually AI contributed 50% of the candidates that were in the final rounds of interviews. So we actually found some really good talent through that. This is not his prompt, but this is the prompt template. We usually work in prompt templates. This is the prompt template that you can use to do a similar search. So you can screenshot this, or maybe we can even share the slides afterwards. You can just copy paste. But this is the template. What you want to do is go into ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, select deep research. This is really important. And then paste in this prompt or even just upload this screenshot because AI can process visuals as well. And the only thing you have to add is a JD. And as long as you paste the JD or you attach the JD and you do it together with this prompt on deep research, you will get a list of 5 candidates for that role. And you can actually even say to AI, I need 10 candidates or 15. So that will be an assistant that you can implement today that's super practical, gives you a ton of value. And again, this is just a framework. You can obviously tweak it in any way that you want to really make it yours. The second one is totally out of left field. This is Tracy Franklin from Moderna. You may have heard that at Moderna, they've actually combined the people and systems technology role. So she is the chief people and technology officer at Moderna. And she had a really, really interesting use case for using GPTs, which are like these mini apps that you can build on top of ChatGPT. So I'll play the video here.
I do a lot with our executive team. Obviously, I'm the CHRO in addition to running technology for the company. And we have a lot of personality tests that we've used in the organization. And so I've created profiles in a GPT of our executive committee. And I have scenarios of when two people are maybe at conflict, or when I have to go in with an opinion or a recommendation, and how might the group react to my recommendation. Or if I'm having a really bad day and I need to understand myself and why I'm triggering, I actually have a completely interactive coach, therapist, and teammate for me that I use all the time. It's been like my favorite thing. And I've said, here's a situation. How are these two people going to react? Or this is what happened. Why did these two people react this way? And how best can I help coach the reconciliation? And I will tell you, I think I'm pretty good with people, but it gives me an advantage that I didn't have before, because I don't fully understand someone's innate human personality response like the GPT allows me to do.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I especially love that she said, I'm pretty good with humans, but this AI actually makes me even more human, right? Which again really speaks to this idea of AI is not here to take away jobs. AI is not here to replace us, but it is offering a ton of capabilities that few of us are really tapping into, right? And so this idea of, well, you could emulate people that you normally speak to, in her case, her executive team. And she did some real deep research on all of these individual team members, uploaded that into a GPT, and now is speaking to them. So before she presents something, she can sort of get their feedback before she talks to them. And it's just absolutely fantastic, right? We have a version of this, again, steal the prompt. You can screenshot it. We can share out the slide, right? We have a version of this. You could actually switch it out and make it exactly like how she did it, where the AI should always reply as the team members or as your fellow executive team members. We do it as a personal board of directors. So think about the 3 people in the world that if you had all the money in the world, you would hire to be your personal coach, right? So maybe Brene Brown or Priya Parker is one of my heroes, right? You would say, whenever I have a challenging situation, I want these people to counsel me. But of course, until I'm actually a billionaire, I don't have money to hire them. But the AI has read all of their interviews, has read all of their books, has seen everything that they've ever put out in terms of advice. So actually can emulate them quite well. As long as it's a known person, it can emulate them quite well. So this prompt, basically, you load it into a ChatGPT project or even into a GPT or a gem. And again, I can show you, if you haven't done it before, how to do it after the session. And then from that moment on, you have a personal, completely tailored set of advisors that with every challenge will give you very tailored advice. Again, I use this all the time. So it's a group favorite, also personal favorite. This is actually the one that we kick off with, because I always think it's so powerful. Another very practical one, this is from Jonas Dahl, another graduate from our program, who is the head of payroll at a company called Service in Denmark. And he actually created an AI assistant. He did it in Copilot. Sometimes Copilot gets a bad rep, and our trainings become half a Copilot therapy session. But he did it in Copilot and basically said, well, whenever I upload a CV, and I upload a job description, I want you to write really good, thoughtful interview questions that are super tailored to that person, right? And again, this is not his prompt, this is our prompt template. Steal the prompt, right? This would be another great assistant, right? Because how often do we run into an interview and we're quickly scanning over their resume, we're asking a couple of quick questions, right? You can actually get the AI to do all the work of hours of reading and brainstorming and thinking and coming up with really, really amazing questions, and then have those questions ready when you jump into an interview. And eventually you can even, again, make it an assistant, you could make it an agent, you could build a light automation so it gets sent to you ahead of time. Again, all of that happy to demo in the after the session part. But this will be an amazing way to get immediate impact from AI. Actually, we had someone else who went through the program who built something very similar and interviewed a candidate who said that she had the best job interview of her entire life with him. It was the chairman of a big tech company. And what he did was not only put the JD in and the person's profile, but also the transcripts of the previous 2 interview calls. And in that, she had already shared quite a bit about herself. So he came to the call with questions that showed that he had really read into her and was really interested and asked things above and beyond. And the AI had come up with some really interesting questions. So it was very powerful. So obviously there's a ton more examples, right? But if you just want to see a couple of ways in which you can build these assistants to be really tailored. Okay, yes, we will send the prompts in a doc, super tailored to you, right? Again, it's really where they're going to be most helpful to you. That's where you would want to orient them. And then let's talk more broadly about use cases, right? Because they're, again, going back to Lars's idea of there's so much talk about AI being implemented, but then we don't really get to do it, right? And companies now are also starting to talk a lot more about AI fluency, or at least in our world, this is pretty much all that I hear about these days. Everyone must be fluent in AI. This is Wade Foster from Zapier about a year ago, the CEO, who said 100% of new hires must be fluent in AI. And actually, he posted this, and then someone replied and said, well, what does it mean to be fluent in AI? And he said, well, okay, we haven't really figured it out, but we will. And then eventually they did publish a sort of like a fluency framework or fluency matrix, right? What does it mean to be fluent in AI in role X, right? And what are the different stages there? And we did something very similar based on the data that we have gathered over the course of those 2 years, training so many people up on the fluency scale. And we won't go through it today, but really what we're talking about here is about integrated fluency, right? And there's a difference between AI literacy, which is that AI theoretically, right? Which is a good foundation, but the real benefits of AI come when you integrate it into your own role and into your own workflow. So we're really talking about that integrated AI fluency. And there was a study recently from Stanford that showed that when people are trying to offload entire workflows to AI, their productivity actually drops. So if you ever had that feeling of actually working with AI, sometimes I feel like I'm slower than if I just do the work. And what they found is that's because AI and humans, they work very differently. And the way to get the benefit out of AI and to get a 25 productivity raise, which they saw in other cases, is to actually figure out what is the human really good at, and then what is the AI really good at. And then sort of like bouncing the ball back and forth between you and the AI. So all the use cases are never really about, find a workflow and give it to AI and AI will do it end to end, but it's always about how can the AI support you in the work that you're already doing in the particular parts of the task that AI is really good at, right? And that's where I could look, for example, in my role, but you should do this for your role as well, to say, out of all the work that I do, right? If I break that down, every job being sort of a collection of tasks, right? If I break those tasks down to the atomic level, what are things that I'm currently doing that AI is already really good at, right? So I could think, for example, about writing my newsletter. Obviously the thought has to come from me and the idea has to come from me, right? But the editing part, or even writing a first draft, not to say you should publish that first draft, right? But all these other elements AI can do really well, right? And that's really where you want to find your use cases. So I'll just mention a few of these, and again, we'll share everything. But where we have seen in our programs, right, where other HR people have built assistants, they really get specific on, in my current role, what is stuff that I'm doing that AI could actually do well, and sometimes maybe even better because it has limitless patience, right? It will just keep doing the thing and it will never complain. So this could be, for example, on FAQs, right? This is one that we hear quite a bit about. But also think about an AI that coaches people through their first 90 days, right? Or maybe you're not super strong in data. So having a data analyst by your side, again, not a generalist, not the out of the box ChatGPT analysis, but something that's really tailored to your role, right? Or creating reports because you're doing a lot of reporting. We had someone who created a offer letter generator because she realized, oh, actually, the way you're describing what AI is good at, that sounds a lot like the work that I do when I create offer letters, right? So what if that is templated? What if that is standardized? And therefore, what is the part that AI can do? And I only have to brief it in and then do the corrections, editing, and finalization after the fact, right? So there's tons of use cases like that. And again, this is not theory, right? These are things that people actually have built and actually found useful. Similar in talent acquisition, right? Think about things like job description rewriting. So you get submitted a pretty crappy job description, you know that's not the right way. You could start manually editing, but you could also train an assistant to do it, right? For that part of the process. Think about outreach, right? You could draft notes with AI. Think about candidate FAQ, right? So could you make available an FAQ, a bot that replies to frequently asked questions about a particular role or about the culture in the company, right? Or about anything. Think about shortlisting resumes, right? Like all of these are very practical use cases that you can implement and immediately get a benefit, especially when you really tailor them to your role. And the same in L&D, right? There's so much work in L&D. I mean, obviously we know that because we live it every single day. There's so much work that again, it's so easy to get into the autopilot and oh, this is how we've always done it, and let's just keep doing it, right? No, we should step out of that and say, wait a minute, if it's digital, if it's repetitive work, if it's done on a computer, basically the AI can do it or at least can do parts of it, right? So think about personalized learning. So this is obviously what we apply a lot. Think about course content creation. I really like this idea. Someone created a knowledge base to micro learning conversion. So they had an existing knowledge base in the company, and they said, why don't we convert all the articles in that knowledge base to short little, actually they did it through Notebook LM and created as like little videos, right? So all of these things, again, they're available with your existing tools. You don't have to learn anything new. It's all already there. It's just about kind of like figuring out where in the process could AI play a big role and then implement it. And I have another final steal this prompt. This is also a deep research agent. But this prompt, actually, if you screenshot it or you take it from the document we'll share after, if you use this one, the only thing you have to swap out there in the left-hand corner is your specialism because it's already optimized for HR generally. So you just say, I'm general HR or people ops or L&D or TA. You submit this prompt to the deep research agent. So again, go into ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. Select deep research, and it will go out to the web. It will spend 15 to 20 minutes, and it will try to find only proven use cases, right? Because a lot of the time when you say to AI, find me some use cases, or how could I use AI? It will come up with like things it found on blogs or like vendor presentations or things like that. No. We only want it from other people like us who have personally benefited from implementing a certain AI use case. So if you use this prompt, it will find 5, although you could change the number 5 here next to objective and make it 10 or 15. But it's usually good to start with 5 and see if it even did the job correctly. And then you can always ask for more. So with this one, you will get something super personalized to you and to make sure it's really beneficial. So then the last part, before we can have an open discussion, I can go outside of SlideShare and demo a bunch of things, whatever is helpful, is some guardrails around using AI responsibly, because obviously, especially when we work with people, this is of the utmost importance. And I'll just highlight 5. Again, they may be a little bit obvious to some. For others, this may be a good reminder or wake-up call. First of all, we never want to use AI on autopilot, right? The World Economic Forum did a big study recently, and they said, there's different ways that this can go, right? Either the AI can take over completely and basically it leads us instead of us leading them. We need to move what they call towards a co-pilot economy where the humans stay in the loop. And I have a couple of interesting case studies we can look at together as well. You also want to make sure that you mitigate bias, right? So whether it's that the AI is introducing the bias or just perpetuating bias that humans already have, right? Very important. As an example of a process that ServiceNow handles with 44 specific things that they look at every time they build any kind of AI assistant or AI agent is there any risk for bias, right? They always check, is there fairness here? Are we preventing discrimination, etc.? This is super important because you're starting to build AIs that can do and will do a lot of work themselves. So you got to make sure that there's not an issue in, for example, the system prompt that, it starts to do work that we otherwise never would have done as humans, right? Because that's not the point of AI. Transparent and trustworthy AI usage. So internally, this is obviously like a really big topic. I'm preparing a keynote for later this week where this is going to be a big discussion around transparency, right? You cannot win if you don't use AI transparently. If you're not telling people in the company, even externally, how are you using AI? Where is AI applied? So let's say in a recruiting process, at which stage is the AI involved, right? Again, hopefully as a co-pilot, hopefully the human is still in the loop, but be clear on where the AI is implemented. And this also helps you create buy-in, very similar around privacy, security, compliance, right? All these things have to be built in how you work with AI. And then finally, maybe on a slightly more positive note, right, on this idea of AI fluency, create a culture of safe experimentation, right? So first of all, of course, it is all about people starting to experiment, doing these deep researches, figuring out where they can use AI, building some implementation. We always see as long as people build around 3 AI assistants during the programs that we run, we know that that's typically the catalyst for a lot more AIs being built. You just got to give people that push, kind of like that kickstart. And David Porter, who at that point was the senior director for learning at Moderna, which is one of the big AI case studies, he said, we cannot assume that we know people's roles better than they do themselves, right? So you can give people some basic knowledge, but then it's really all about letting them experiment and letting them experiment safely. So that's what I think, somewhat in the 20 minutes I was assigned, what I put together. Happy to go back to any of these. There's a lot more examples. I can demo some things live, whatever would be helpful for the group here.
I think everyone should be able to unmute themselves. If anyone wants to ask before I maybe take us through some questions people asked in advance, anyone wants to? Okay. So I think I'll get us kind of started with some questions that people asked, and I think the one that really came up a lot is how do you know when to choose the right tool and which use case, and how you don't kind of confuse people in your organization, but actually help them to focus on the right tools to work with.
Yeah, so this is a big question, but actually a very simple question, because typically the easiest answer is just to say use the AI platform that has access to most of your data, because AI thrives on data, right? The AI doesn't really do anything other than crunching the data. So it obviously has a huge amount of data that it has in the public domain. That's when you're using ChatGPT or any tool like that, where the AI will dig from all of the data it already has. But for you, it becomes actually valuable when it has access to your data. So if you have most of your data sitting on the Microsoft suite, you want to use Copilot. If you have most of it sitting on Google Drive, Google Drive, Gmail, etc., you want to use Gemini. If needed, then you can always use ChatGPT or Claude with a bunch of connectors. But the easiest place to start is to start with where the data is. And because we mostly work with executives, I always explain it in a very simple way, which is that if you were to hire a new executive assistant, which is pretty typical for them, right? The first days and weeks and months are actually quite painful, because they may be really good at their job and they may be really smart, but they don't know your preferences yet. They don't know where you like to have your lunches and how much time there should be between meetings and all these kind of things, right? And then over time, they get to know you more and more, and then they become a truly helpful assistant, right? And so this is very much also what we want to do when we're picking our platforms, is to really start with where the data is. And then there are, I would say, a couple of fan favorites, right? Because most of these platforms are actually, there's always people saying, oh, this one is better than this one, but they have way more in common than they are different. And then there are a couple of fan favorite third-party tools. I'll name 3. Number 1 is NotebookLM. NotebookLM is a tool from Google. It's hosted at notebooklm.google. And it allows you to upload a notebook full of documents. This could be Google Docs, it could be PDFs, it could even be YouTube videos. You can copy paste text into it. And then it allows you to ask questions only about that content. And so we wouldn't get from its general knowledge, we would only get it from that content. And you can then turn it into learning videos. You can turn it into mind maps. You can create quiz questions from it. So this is one that's very popular. The second one is Gamma AI. So Gamma AI, basically, you can take the outline of a presentation, paste it into Gamma, and Gamma will generate the entire presentation for you. So you never have to write slides anymore. Hence, it's a big favorite in the community and the people that we work with. And the final one is Lovable. So Lovable is a platform where you can give it a simple prompt. I have one example in the slide deck where someone said, I'm really tired of working with my HRIS. I would never say anything about LMSs, but I'm really tired of working with my HRIS. And she vibe coded her own HRIS literally over the weekend. So Lovable is a platform where you can just tell the kind of tool or platform you want to build, and a whole army of AI agents goes to work and builds the platform for you. And I usually do this live in workshops, and it's always fantastic because that idea that you always had, usually not work related, you can now build it and you immediately have it live in front of you. So it's always fantastic. So I'd say those are really like the key platforms. And again, for any specific purposes or use cases, happy to recommend more as well.
I used Lovable once to build a website to help me when my son has like tantrums. Like different
Exactly.
ask, what can I do when he
Exactly.
gets tantrums? That's really cool. Actually, a lot of the things that you're talking about are really cool because that's exactly what our platform is designed to do. It sits on database of companies, all of the SSO and such, and then it has the context of the company, so you find relevant answers, like you said, and it kind of connects to all the tools people are working with, and all the different processes. So it's really cool that you're talking about it. But obviously, one of the challenges when you don't have a system like ours and you work with something like a notebook or something, is that it doesn't sit on the company knowledge, basically. So you
Hmm.
need,
Hmm.
well, compliance wise, usually companies don't really sync their own data with open AI sources like that. And
Yep.
then one of the challenges is, again, when you don't have a dedicated tool for it, how do you keep like data updated? Because it's continuous work to maintain. And that's, I think, one of the heavy lifts. Is there anything that you've seen out there, again, with those open sources that could be a solution for that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is where it gets complicated, right? Because if there was a Microsoft rep on the call today, or there was a Google rep on the call, they would say, "But that's what we do natively, right? We are gathering all the data of a company, and you can launch agents on top of that, and then the agents do their work. But of course, it will never be across platforms. It will never take, Salesforce data here and the Slack chats here, and then right. So it's always more distributed, but." What people are doing, and I think again, sometimes it's really helpful to separate sort of like what's the end dream state, right? Which would be having all your data in one place where you definitely have to go to a third-party vendor, right? And having all the live things connect and these agents feeding themselves and teaching themselves, right? And it's very helpful to separate that from what in product we would call the minimum viable product, right? Because sometimes like then good or perfect becomes the enemy of done, right? We basically never implement AI because we think the only way to get benefit from AI is to launch these massive platforms and tools, right? And so what we want to do is almost to say, but what is the really simple version of that that you could build today yourself using the tools that you already have, and then get people to use it, and then go to your leadership and say, you see that this is really important, but we should have it on a more professional level, or we should have it at a platform that does connect all the data sources, right? So your very low-hanging fruit, your MVP could be something like, I'm putting all the relevant data, if you're on Google, for example, I'm putting all the relevant data in one Google Doc, which is a little bit of manual copy pasting. So let's say an FAQ, right? You take all your HR FAQs, you put it in a Google Doc, you attach it to a gem. The gem automatically updates every time there's an update to the Google Doc. That means that you could literally have hundreds of people, thousands of people using this gem to ask questions either internally or externally. And every time you update the Google Doc, the knowledge base, the bot also gets updated, right? And so again, this is not the end state because eventually we want the AI to grab all that information from all the different sources and constantly update. But it's a great way to prove that there is a need for something like that. And then when a lot of people use it, you can always launch a new and improved. And you say, now we have a dedicated platform for this particular feature, right? And that could be, I've seen it with something as simple as we spend a lot of time rewriting job descriptions. So you first launch a little GPT where people can rewrite job descriptions based on the framework you practice in your company and including all of the templated elements, right? And then people are using it so much that we say, we should develop a little web app or we should buy licenses for a platform that does this professionally, right? But let's not let the big, daunting technical implementation get in the way of what us, mostly, I only work with non-technical leaders, but like what mostly us non-technical people can already do with the $20 tool that we have in front of us, right?
Yeah, interesting. We have two more questions. One wrote in the QA, but I think you're one of the people who has my name under. Could you raise hand so I can allow you to speak? The person who wrote, the anonymous attendee that wrote the question in the QA. If not, I can read it for you, but
It's
okay,
me.
I don't know. Yeah. Ethan, you
Okay.
also wrote a question, so go ahead.
Yes. As AI assistant become key in HR and LAD, what is your biggest challenge right now integrating quality data into your executive program or your training? What is the biggest challenge?
It's not so much a challenge like what we just talked about. It's just a bit manual right now. But the way we have to think about it is that like these are all kind of like escalating levels of implementation, right? So right now, if you want to get the right data into it, you definitely still have to do a little bit of manual work. But then that quite quickly evolves into, okay, it's working. You can then build it into an assistant, you could build it into an automation, and eventually even an agent. So it would just be a little bit more manual in the beginning. But that's just the way to quickly get something live and then move into deeper implementations.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And again, like I don't even like to talk about challenges, right? Because I think again, like we're making AI so complicated and mystical and technical, and we say, oh, I don't know that. I used to have a digital person and they would do this kind of stuff, right? But AI literally has been created to replicate the human brain. And you can build these assistants very easily. It's super, literally 3 to 5 minutes to implement one and then to iterate on it, right? And so I would always say, yes, there will be challenging things. But for us to even use 10% of what AI can already do today, it's all right there in front of us. It's just really a matter of adopting it, trying it, a bit of experimentation, and usually freeing up some time because that's commonly why people don't do it, right? No time. Too busy to implement things that will save me time.
Very true. Oh, we have your raised hand by Buddha. Go ahead.
Hi,
Yeah.
thank you, Gina. Thank you, Dan. So I was a HR earlier, like in my previous role, and I used to work with interns a lot. But the only trouble was to find the proper channel for asking them to work because the workload would be really hectic. And that transformed since now I'm an education platform, and I do know that students are supposed to be well aware of how to use AI tools. I'm quite not sure how it will be relevant with a human resource, but yes, there are students who want to be a HR, and for them, I know they are using on day-to-day basis AI tools for everything, but I do want to let them know certain platforms or do's and don'ts when they deal with confidential data. Like I know there are companies, my students work for companies, and there will be some NDAs that we sign. So there are certain parts of the confidentiality of data that we use. Sometimes I figure it out that they are using a lot of AI tools, but just to know if there is any platform or if there is a way, because as Dan was also mentioning, that there are certain etiquettes of using data, we should know which one to be publicly put across for views. So, is there any platform that can actually be used, or is there any instruction that could be made so that this data, even because we cannot stop the students from using them, but is there any instruction that we can use to keep the data confidential?
No, I mean like the only thing you can do, so mostly when we go into companies and I talk about is like fluency matrix, right? Everyone will be at different levels of fluency, and most people will still be at level 0, which is they're using AI in unsafe ways. And usually
Yeah,
that is because they're just completely unaware that if you take data and you put it into an AI, that you're
yeah,
sending that data somewhere. And so a lot
yes,
of the time it's just simply education, right? So simply understanding how do these tools work, how do they process data, and explain from the company side why we are not in favor of sending
mhm,
that data to a third party platform. And that's obviously true for the core AI platforms like your ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. But it's also true
mhm,
for people using meeting like AI meeting note takers, right? Where they're sending it to every
yeah,
single meeting. It's extracting all this data and then it gets sent to a company called Firefly or a company called, right, like Other AI. and we don't know what happens with that data. A lot of the times it's really just awareness of what happens with that data. And then typically we see people not really do it, but of course we can never prevent it fully, right? Unless we want to onboard them into our company. So unfortunately, a challenge that we have to deal with. And would love to share a lot more, but I actually had a call start a couple of minutes ago, so I'll have to jump off. But happy
Yeah.
to share the slides and also follow up on any other questions from the group
I'll
here.
also share Dan's email and LinkedIn profile, so you are more than welcome to stay in touch with him and contact him directly. Noor, I'm really sorry we didn't have time for your question.
Sorry, Noor.
But yeah, but there's just so much more to learn from you. So thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate your time and knowledge here. And thank you so much, everyone. We'll share the recording and Dan's prompts and details for contact with everyone. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye,
so much,
everyone.
everyone. Bye bye.